Dough day. Hey, we're gonna make my sourdough bread. I'm gonna take off my headphones. Wait for some friends to hop in. Hey, Shirley. Hey, Shirley, I see you, girly. All right, I'm gonna put my hair up in my hat real quick. Get ready to make some sourdough bread. All right. That's better. Okie dokie. We'll let a couple more people hop in before we get started. I know there's some people excited to see what I do here, so we'll give them a sec. Can you guys hear me all right? I'm drinking hibiscus tea. I brewed it this morning. This morning I had a phone call with my friend who lives in India. She's teaching me how to do Ayurvedic hair care. So this morning we put together, you can hear me good? Okay, good. We put together a conditioner. I didn't wash my hair today because I was like, you know what? I'm going live with Melly on Saturday. I'm going to wash my hair on Saturday morning so it'll be fresh for the live. So I didn't wash it today. It's in the fridge. Hey girl, hey, Holly's in the house. Pretty pumped to try this conditioner. It's made with 100% like plants and herbs. So I did okra water. So you just like chop up okra and put it in cold water and pop it in the fridge overnight. And so that makes this like really super gooey, slimy consistency. And then I did hibiscus leaf water, which I didn't know you could use the whole plant of the hibiscus, but apparently hibiscus, they use the whole plant in India. Would you like to come over here and talk to me, or are you just going to sit there and whine? Come over here and talk to me? No? She's just going to whine. She's whining at me. And then we did the hibiscus flower, and we did some rice water. So you just like take the rice and soak it, and you cook down. I'm going to put you outside if you keep whining at me. Do you want to go outside? She just like tilted her head. My dog's whining at me. I look cute. Oh, thanks. I'm slumming it. I'm in my my uniform. I wear a apron to the farmer's market. I'm getting a new apron made. I'm super pumped about my new apron. I haven't ordered the actual apron yet, but a friend of mine does embroidery. So I'm going to get a embroidered, logoed apron for the farmer's market over the summer. Yaya on here, she's Santa Cruz Customs. She made an apron for me last year, but it's starting to peel off. So I'm going to get an embroidered one. So hopefully that will last me for a long time. It's going to be expensive though. Yeah, so much better. It's going to be like $80, I think, but I feel like it'll be worth it. And then we're going to do some like cross promoting stuff. You're a silly dog. Put it on the floor so I can step on it. Put it on the floor so I can step on it. Put it on the floor. Put it on the floor. There we go. She wants to play with me when I go live. You coming with me to the market? Heck yeah. Yeah, we should promote. That would be awesome. You're going to be back here this summer then? You coming up here in the summer? Heck yeah. Uh-oh, my husband's calling me. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, all right, we're back. Hi, I'm back. Sorry, my husband called. He took a SCOBY to work for our friend on here, for her nephew, and he's like, it's still here. He didn't come back. Hey, Michelle. All right, I was waiting for you guys. So I think we have a sufficient amount of people on here. Are you guys ready for quick and dirty dough time? Show you how to do it. I will show you closer up on my mixer when we're getting to the point where you really need to see what it looks like. But for just in the beginning, I think you can see well enough, right? You have a decent view. These dogs. You think he'll be there soon? Okay. I mean, it's fine. My husband just wanted to make sure that it doesn't need to go in the fridge. Hold on one second. Hey! Why are you barking? You're so ridiculous. You're so ridiculous. Here, bring it over here. Bring it over here, puppy. Bring it over here. I'll play with you. Of course, I'm happy to do it. She never barks like that either. She is showing off. He goes back to work tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fine just sitting there for however long it takes. He literally just has to walk in and say, "Hi, my name's Andrew. I need the SCOBY. It was left here for me. It should be in the office in the back." And they'll be able to grab it for him because it's something obscure. Like he told the guy who was working what it was, what it's for, to expect him. So no big deal. It will be perfectly fine. If it takes a week, no big deal. Okay, so I'm going to make my standard like quadruple a little plus batch. So for my bread, for each cup of water, I add 2 cups of flour, roughly. So you'll see you add a little bit more depending on how much sourdough starter you add, how much water you add. So it is kind of more of a method than an exact recipe, because exact recipes don't always work for every place. You might live somewhere really humid. You might live somewhere really dry. So it just varies. Hi. Hello. You're silly dogs. All right. So I'm going to pour in. This is 5.5 cups of water. This is the max I can fit in my mixer. If you have a standard KitchenAid mixer, you're probably only going to be able to do like a double batch. So like 2 cups of water, 4 cups of flour, maybe 3 cups of water. You'll have to try if you have like the big one. The only time I use exact recipes is when I'm fermenting vegetables. And then I use the weight because you have to. If you don't use exact recipes when you're fermenting, you will get mold. So 5.5 cups of water in here. This is for like a big batch. This is going to make 4 loaves of bread or like 3 loaves and 3 pizzas. And this dough can be used for all sorts of stuff. This is sourdough starter straight from the refrigerator. The way I feed my sourdough is I feed it after I mix something. So I'm going to put most of this sourdough starter in here, like almost all of it. Now, how much sourdough starter you use is going to depend on how long you want it to ferment for. So I'm preparing to ferment this overnight. It's going to sit on the table overnight, but it is cold right now in Colorado. It's cold in my house. If it was hotter, I wouldn't need to use as much starter. Yeah, it's probably why you had a problem. If you don't do exact measurements to get that right % of salt in culturing veggies, you can run into an issue for sure. All right, so I'm just scraping the starter into my mixer. Just like that, and it's happy, it's floating. People always say, "Oh, the float test." Sometimes it floats, sometimes it doesn't. As long as it doubles or triples in size after you feed it, your starter's good to go. So to this, for each 1 cup of water, I do 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt. So in this case, I'm doing almost 6 cups of water. So I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of salt, which is basically 6 teaspoons, right? And then I do 1 tablespoon of oil for each cup of water. So I'm going to do roughly 6 tablespoons of oil. And for each cup of water, I do 2 cups of flour. So we're going to do 11 scoops of flour to start, and then we're gonna mix it and see what it looks like to see if we need to add more. Now this recipe is super, super basic. If you want to make something like bagels or pretzels, all you have to do is take it from 2 cups of flour to 3 cups of flour. That's the only difference, is there's more flour in it. I've looked up hundreds of recipes and cross-referenced and gauged how much to do of each thing. You'll see I'm not super precise. I'm not like being crazy precious about this, because we are going to go back in and probably add some more flour, okay? This is like the easiest, laziest, once you know what to look for, bread recipe. It's so consistent. So that was roughly 3 cups of flour. We're gonna do 4. And you'll figure out if you're a heavy-handed. 5, 6. You'll know, like, oh man, I put too much in. Next time I won't scoop quite as hard. 7, 8, 9. And this actually looks like enough. So I'm going to go with 10 right now, just because I know what it looks like. Yeah, I just use the organic Costco all-purpose flour. The thing you want to look for in flour is you want to make sure that there is no enrichment in the flour. So all that's in this is organic hard red wheat and organic malted barley flour. You don't want enriched, because enriched is sprayed with folic acid, and folic acid is a huge issue for at least 60% of the people in the United States. It is a problem. We cannot process it properly. You can use bread flour, totally fine. Just make sure it's organic and not enriched. This is how you make a nutrient-dense, non-inflammatory sourdough, okay? When it's not organic, 100% of the flour in the United States that is not organic is sprayed with glyphosate. So you're basically baking an antibiotic bread. No bueno, okay? Not good, not good. Organic flour or no flour. These are the options in the United States. Don't F around with glyphosate. It is not safe for your microbiome, okay? So I'm just gonna pop the lid on here and turn this on. It's gonna be noisy. We just want all of this. Hey, Miss Lopez, we want all of this to start mixing in, and then I can take the lid off and show you what it looks like. Nope, I'm making a mess. Yeah, see, I thought right. I felt it. I felt like I was a little heavy-handed here, so we'll let this mix up and see what it looks like here in just a second. I'm going to scrape the extra goodies off the lid here while we're mixing. Wow, yeah, see, I was right. I stopped it at the 10 scoops. Had I been scooping a little lighter, I maybe would have had to add some, but I think I'm good to go here. I don't think I'm going to need to add any flour. That doesn't really help you, does it? You love the mixer? I hate this mixer. I hate this mixer. This thing's terrible. I would get rid of it, but it's the only thing I have that mixes up a reasonable quantity of dough. This mixer, the dough gets stuck in the middle. So if you use a full batch, the dough will like work its way into that middle column, and the only way to get it out of there is to like soak it and like plunge it in and out of water and like try to spray in there with a hose. It's an absolute nightmare. It's not a favorite. I would not recommend buying a Bosch. I would get, there's a brand called Ankenscheinen or something like that. It starts with an A. AKEN something. That's the one I would get if I was buying it. I got this as a hand-me-down for my mom. That's the only reason I still have it, because it was free, basically. So what we're looking for, I'm going to bring you guys down low so you can see. What we're looking for is we want the sides to be cleaned off. See how the sides are clean? And then we want the center to still kind of be stuck. You see how it's still attached on the bottom? Can you guys tell? It's hard to get a good angle on it. If it was too dense, then this dough would climb all the way up out of the thing, and it would be wrapping over the top. So if you have a normal, like a KitchenAid mixer with a hook on the bottom, it will wrap around the hook, and there'll be like a little ball on the hook, and it'll still be attached in the middle on the bottom instead of completely wrapping around the hook. That's what we're going for here. So you can see on the side a little better how it's still attached in the middle. Like, you can't tell when I turn it off. I call it a dough-nado. It's like a tornado made out of dough, right? And then we're just gonna have to knead this for quite a while. Like 10 minutes thereabouts. It's just gonna do the thing. So what we're doing now is we're building strength in the gluten structure. So kneading it and working the dough, normally you would be doing this by hand. A lot of people do things called coil folds, where they lift it up to the middle and it folds over, or they'll do stretch and folds where they pull up from the sides and fold it over. That's a form of kneading. So you're just taking that dough and you're stretching it, and that redistributes the gluten and it helps to strengthen the structure of the dough. And doing that is what helps your dough to rise really tall. It makes nice airy pockets in the bread. If you want it to be like an artisan loaf where you have big holes throughout, then you want to do the stretch and folds, you want to do the coil folds. I'm making a sandwich loaf. Sandwich loaf, you don't want a bunch of big holes in it. You want it to be a fairly consistent crumb. The crumb is what they call the inside of the bread. That's the crumb. You want it to be fairly flush. You don't want to have a bunch of huge air pockets in there, because then your peanut butter falls through, or your butter falls through, right? So that's the real big difference between this. Now I use the same dough for a bunch of stuff, okay? I use it for pizza. I make it into sandwich bread. I make it into focaccia. I've made it into artisan loaf. The same basic recipe can make you an abundance of different kinds of sourdough. Very, very versatile. While this is doing its thing, I'm thinking I should do my milk kefir. What do you guys think? Kefir time? We'll let this do this, and then we'll go over here and do my kefir. So we're not just getting yelled at by the mixer. Is the mixer really loud on your guys' end? And like, it's loud at my end. I'm gonna get some water for my sourdough starter. So I have barely any starter left in there, and I'm gonna give it about a cup of water, and we will finish feeding this in a sec. And then I'm gonna get my kefir down. It's not too bad. Okay, good. I have my special mic on. I think my dough is good consistency. Didn't knead it long enough. That is very possible. And then a lot of issues come into play with shaping, and you also may have potentially overproofed it a little bit, which will make it fall. Yeah, it's super, super loud in person. That mixer's loud. You can still hear me good. Yeah, I put my mic on. I figured that would be a smart. Let me get all the stuff to do my kefir. Gotta do my kefir. And I have so many, there's like amazing videos on my sourdough page on how to shape the bread. How old is your kefir? Or your kefir, sorry. How old is your sourdough starter? Is it a new starter? Is it an established starter? How long have you had it for? Because if your starter is kind of new, that could have also been a contributing factor. Do the kefir dance. I need a stick. Strain out some kefir. About a year. Okay, so it's probably fairly strong. How do you feed your sourdough starter? Because that can impact it too. If you're feeding it 1 to 1 to 1, yay! Kefir grains tomorrow. That's exciting. Oops. Dog hair in the thing. Super exciting. I'm just gonna strain out my kefir here. Oh, yeah, so okay. So first thing we're gonna do is change how you feed your starter. So what you're gonna do is, next time you use your starter, I want you to use almost all of it, like all but the scrapings in the jar. Do you keep it in a quart-sized jar? Hang on, I'll be right back. One to 1 to 1 makes for weak yeast. Tag me on something. So, okay, so you keep it in a quart-sized jar. So next time you feed it, I want you to use almost all of it and then put 1 cup of water in there. And then you're going to add flour until it's a thick paste, almost the same consistency as your dough. So this would be like 1 to 20 to 40 or even more, okay? We're talking a fatty, fat feed, okay? This, feeding it like that, it makes it so that your little baby starter gets to go to a big daddy buffet, and it has a lot of food. So it will sit there and feed on that flour for almost a whole 24 hours, okay? And when you do that, that makes the yeast in your sourdough starter significantly stronger. Like way, 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 way stronger. And so that will give you a lot more lift in your bread. Yeah. Since I switched to that, my bread has started rising so much better. It's so much stronger. And then you can use your starter as a timer to know when the bread is ready to be shaped. So it gives you like a nice straight-sided container. So as your starter rises and doubles, when it's doubled or tripled in your jar, you know, oh, my dough has doubled or tripled. It's time to shape it and get ready to bake. So that's how I keep from over fermenting my dough, because I know that that percentage is very similar to the percentage in my sourdough. Does that make sense? Do you want to go outside, puppy dog? Okay, hold on. Take the puppy outside. Here you go. I think she wants me to go outside too. Okay, cool. Alyssa, did you ask to join on purpose or was that on accident? Oh, that's somebody else who asked to join. So you usually ferment your loaves overnight. How hot is your house? How much starter did you use this last time? Okay. Like, I don't know if you want to get on here. I'm okay with that. Because it is completely like, that's the thing with my recipe. If you want it to be ready in like 4 or 5 hours, you can use a whole cup of starter. If you want to ferment it overnight, doing something like a 1/4 of a cup of starter will work. Oh, it always pops up when I enter. I see. I get several of those a night, so I always like to make sure that it wasn't on purpose. We already mixed up the sourdough. It's just mixing right now. Boy, this is almost a full jar of keeper. I think I might use my recipe but doubled it. But how much starter did you use? Hey, welcome. Oh, sourdough isn't hard. But in the recipe, it says anywhere from 1/4 of a cup to a cup. So I need to know where on that range, how much you used, so that we can narrow down if you just use too much for overnight, which is very easy to do. I think I'm going to ferment this out for cheese. It's not that hard. It was 1/4 of a cup for the double batch. Is your house pretty warm or is it on the cooler side? Because the way it flattened out makes me think it might have just been a little over fermented too. Or did you put it in the pan and then ferment it longer? There could definitely be some learning curve to it, but it's not like as complicated as people make it seem. I was a little intimidated when I started sourdough. And then I started sorting out the easiest possible way to do it. And now I just throw stuff in there. I know like the general measurements and I'm able to wing it more effectively. Definitely didn't need it as long. Yeah. Well, and if your house is like 75 degrees, it's gonna ferment faster than if your house is like 60 or 65. So it varies. Usually do an easy man sourdough. Is that the one where you just like mix it and leave it? I've seen those be fairly successful. It's just a different style, you know, on the cooler side. Okay. So it may not have been overproofed. When you saw it in the morning, was the dough domed over? Because in the winter, I use more sourdough starter than I use in the summer. In the summer, I make this same batch with literally a tablespoon of sourdough starter for 5 loaves of bread. Okay, it was domed. So did you shape it, put it in the pans, and then let it proof longer? I'm letting it strain with gravity more than with the chopstick because the strainer, yeah, that's probably smart. Is my book available already? I haven't seen that. I want to get a starter going. I can send it to you, Alyssa. You can be one of my early readers. I haven't have not published it yet. I'm still doing some formatting stuff, so it's still a little rough, and I have a couple more things that I want to add to it. Okay, be right back. I think I'm gonna make some peeled off the plastic wrap, and I think it fell when I pulled it off. Oh, could be. Hey, what's up, neighbor? Come on, girl. Let's see. No worries. Yeah, no, it's not ready. I've shared it to a couple of people for recipe testing and such. All right, get my milk kefir going. And I'm going to make this into cheese. I stopped kneading it when the dough started pulling away from the sides. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, for sandwich bread, you probably wanted to knead it a bit longer. I'm going to take you guys back over there and show you where we're at with our kneading. All right. Let's go over here real quick and look at it. There we go. So it is climbing the sides, or the middle. Definitely still climbing. It looks a lot smoother than it did, for sure. I don't want to touch it because my fingers aren't completely clean. I think it needs a couple more minutes. You guys will see when I come back to it, it's going to be a lot more smooth. So I'm going to turn that back on. And I need to go get some more milk. So we're going to go down to the dairy fridge. Since my milk retrievers are currently entertained. Check out my dairy fridge. Oh my gosh. Alright, I'm gonna bring this. I just went to Costco, obviously. That's 2 weeks worth of dairy in my household to make kefir and yogurts and all the things. Okay. Don't mess with the call. I try to be stocked, yeah. Yep, I do not mess around. I go to the grocery store once every 2 weeks. I do not like to go to the grocery store that often. So I stock up when I go so that I don't have to go back. All right, sweet. That's making kefir every day and making yogurt for my family and a couple other families. You can be that organized. You just have to think about what you use in a week. I make the same stuff pretty much every single week, and you just buy the same things that you use, and you go, oh, I use 6 half-gallons of milk in a week, so I need to buy 12 of them. You're at the grocery store every other day? Oh my gosh. That might actually kill me. I might drop dead if I had to go to the grocery store every other day. That might actually kill me. It took me several years and a lot of planning to figure out how to not have to go to the grocery store that often. And I think the biggest thing that triggered me to like learn how to not have to go that often was when I had kids. Because I was like, F that, I don't want to be going to the grocery store with the kids all the time. And I don't like to have to wait for stuff. I used to Instacart a lot, but then I figured out how to bulk buy and just stock myself. So since I'm mostly an ingredients household, like I make all of our dairy products, I make all of our food from scratch. Like all I have to do is buy the ingredients. So I buy the flour, I buy the fats, I buy all the dairy, I buy everything in big containers. So I'm not just running out of stuff. And yeah, it's not cheap when I go to the grocery store every 2 weeks, but I don't have to go back to the grocery store for another 2 weeks. I even went, I did a 3-week shop over the holidays, and talk about a full fridge. It was really full. I used the organic all-purpose flour from Costco for pretty much everything. Occasionally I'll bust out some more interesting flours, like if I'm doing a gluten-free situation, I'll do that. But okay, get my hands clean so I can touch the dough. All right. Rinse off my kefir stuff. Hot tip, if you're making kefir, don't leave it aka. Used to go once a month, yeah. 2 fridges and 3 freezers. Not messing around. I like having all my food here. I wonder if they have that kind of flour here in Canada. I don't know. You'd have to check. Let us know when you find out. Okay, I'm going to go over here once again and feed the sourdough starter. Yeah, are you guys using nylon sieves for your... Actually, I have a spoon. Let's use the spoon. I'm still on hand washing duty. My dishwasher is still busted, so... Yep, I use the same flour for everything. This is the flour I use. So it looks a lot smoother. I'm going to touch it. See, it's not like crazy sticky. It's a little sticking a little bit, but it's not like super, super sticky. So yeah, I'm going to call that done mixing. So we'll take that out of here in a sec. Wish I had a second refrigerator, then I could stock up. Currently shop once a week. Definitely with the list in hand. Yeah, a list helps. Thought about getting grains to make my own for a starter, but I'm worried about keeping up that extra work. It's not terrible. I like to batch bake, so if I'm gonna make bread, I don't just make 1 loaf. I make 4 loaves, and then you can freeze it if you want. You really only have to do something once a week to keep your sourdough starter alive. Once a week, that's it. So I generally recommend picking a day where you're like, every Sunday I make pancakes, and then you just make pancakes every week. Hey, Joy. And that is when you use your sourdough starter. So you know that your sourdough starter is getting fed at least once a week, and you can make a giant batch of pancakes and freeze them on a cookie sheet and then keep them in the freezer. So then 3 weeks down the road, you're like, hey guys, let's have breakfast for dinner. And you already have pancakes ready. Right? So people aren't just, you don't make a huge batch of pancakes and eat all of them. You're like, you each get 1 pancake after you eat your eggs and your sausage. You can have 1 pancake and the rest are going in the freezer for the next time we have breakfast. You can do that with waffles too. And you can freeze the bread. Bread freezes really, really well. So I'm going to take this thing out. Oh yeah, there's dough all in the middle. That's going to be fun. It's my least favorite part of this mixer. Least favorite part. That's okay. I'm used to it now. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but I'm used to it. Yes, frozen pancakes, frozen waffles. And the cool thing about freezing baked goods like that is it actually lowers the glycemic index. So when you freeze it and then heat it back up, it has less of an impact on your blood sugar when you eat it. So great for people with diabetes or blood sugar issues. You still want to eat them in a blood sugar balanced manner. So you're not going to just eat a pancake. Get out of the habit of eating carbs by themselves. That is not how your body was intended to eat. You need to eat protein first before you eat carbohydrates. So it balances out your blood sugar. It stops you from having crazy, crazy spikes. You want to make sure you have more protein than you do carbohydrate, right? So you're not eating a little tiny portion of beans and then 6 tortillas. Does that make sense? You want to make sure that you have substantial portion of protein to balance out. So if you were looking at 2 packaged foods and this one says this is like chips and it has 20 carbohydrates in a serving, you want to make sure you have at least 20 grams of protein to balance out those carbohydrates. It helps me get the kids to eat their protein too if they can't have their pancakes until it's gone. Exactly. Precisely. So I don't love plastic as a whole, but I do use this plastic container for proofing my dough because I cannot find a glass one. I don't think they exist. But having the straight sides with the measurements on it makes it really easy to tell how much your dough has risen. So I get these from the restaurant supply store. They're nifty. I also have bus tubs that I'll use when I'm making a crap ton of bread in the summer for the farmer's market. And then this is the other plastic thing that I'll use. And it's nice because it bends, especially for this mixer. It's fantastic for scraping down the sides and scraping down the middle. And then I'm just going to put this into here. This is the other thing I don't like about this mixer. You have to like stretch it over the middle. Do you cut and put parchment paper between the slices before freezing? What's the best way to do that? I do use parchment paper between, like on a cookie sheet. I'll lay it on a cookie sheet and I'll put parchment paper between the layers. And then I don't need it after it's frozen. You can just throw them all in a bag. They don't stick together once they're frozen. Nice and stretchy. My fingers are very sticky. I'm going to have to leave you guys here to go wash my hands because I am doughed up. I'm all doughed up. Yeah, so even if you don't do sourdough bread, yes, this is what I'm talking about. When you mix it for a long time, it gets really smooth. You don't have to do sourdough bread to get the benefits of sourdough, okay? You can use it to make all sorts of other baked goods. So you can be like, all right, I have this sourdough starter. I use it to make pancakes and waffles and bagels, and I make muffins. I make quick breads. Like, you can put sourdough starter in any baked good. You can put it in cookies, and then you can ferment the cookie dough. You can ferment the muffin batter. You can ferment the pancake batter. And that helps to break down the gluten and make it more digestible for your body. It also helps to break down things like glyphosate and other pesticides and herbicides. So it's highly effective. It adds enzymes to help you be able to digest it a lot better. It increases the nutrient availability because it turns it into a pre-digested food. Yeah, so I sell sourdough cookies in the summer. I make sourdough muffins. I make sourdough pretzels. I make sourdough flatbreads. I put it in everything. If you are in the kitchen baking, you can put sourdough in it. This may be a stupid question, but how do you know how much to add to each recipe? It's kind of arbitrary. You can basically adjust recipes. So if you do a 1-to-1 feeding, which I don't really recommend, but you can do that for things like regular baked goods. But for bread, you want to feed it more than that. You want to feed more like minimum 1 to 5 to 5, bare minimum. I do more like 1 to 20 to 40. Yeah, I'll post it. It's a method more than a recipe. So you kind of have to adjust it based on how you're doing it. And I did show them early in the stream what to look for when your dough is mixing. So you can go back and watch that if you want. I'm going to go wash my hands really quick. I'll be right back. Too sticky. Too sticky. And there is about 1 million sourdough discard recipes all over the internet. So you're like, I have sourdough, I want to make muffins. Go online and look up sourdough discard banana nut muffin. There's probably 50 recipes. So you don't really have to make that conversion necessarily. If you have a recipe, like a family recipe that you want to try to convert, a lot of times I will just throw in a little sourdough starter and let it sit for several hours and call it good, right? But if you want to like be really careful about the conversion of it, so you have, say you feed 1 to 5 to 5, right? You're gonna take your liquid and the flour in your recipe, and if you want to add a cup of sourdough starter to that recipe, you would take out a 1/2 cup of flour and a 1/2 cup of water if you're converting a regular recipe. All right, so I'm gonna do what's called a coil fold just to kind of organize my dough a little better. So you just pull up from the middle and flop it over. Ooh, they're plowing my street. Stuff's getting real out here. I'm gonna put a little oil on my hand. And then to the other direction, opposite what you just pulled, grab it underneath again, and you just stretch it out and let it fold under. And that's it. And I may do one more set of those coil folds, and that really helps to strengthen the dough. Now here's my starter. That's just avocado oil. I put it in a little sprayer. The only oils that I use are avocado oil and olive oil. The rest I'll use solid fats like ghee, lard, tallow, coconut oil. So I'm just scraping down the starter from the sides, mixing it in a little bit. And then I'm going to add flour to my starter, and I'll show you the consistency of what I'm going for. I love this scoop. This is a Dollar Tree scoop, but it makes it really easy to get the flour into my jar. I want it to be about the same consistency as the dough I just made. I didn't actually put that much water in here. Less than I normally do. Scrape this down. This is why I like a chopstick better, because it doesn't stick as bad. But I've broken so many chopsticks stirring sourdough. So many chopsticks. So you're basically just making like a miniature dough in your jar. This makes the yeast so much stronger in your dough, which helps with the rise in your bread. Okay. Scrape the sides down, and I'll show you guys how stiff it is. It's literally a glob. So it's not liquidy at all. Okay. And then I'm going to mark this with my rubber band. I'll post in my stories tomorrow. Yeah, give it a go. I love making dough at night. It's like my absolute favorite to wake up in the morning. And when I shape my dough in the morning, I'll shape it and I don't sit around and wait forever for it to rise again. By the time I wake up, it's pretty much ready to bake. So I will shape it, and once it's shaped, I'll start the oven to preheat. And then as soon as the oven's preheated, my dough is basically ready to go in. Like, it's fasty fast. It is pretty easy to start a starter yourself. It just takes a while for it to get active, like really strong and active. My starter didn't take off until I added some more potent sourdough strains to it. I had a friend who sent me his sourdough starter that was dehydrated to test it and like try it out. So I restarted his starter. That thing was a banger. Yeah, I think you might have over fermented. The way the top of the bread looked, I suspect it was a little over fermented. Yeah, a few months to get active for sure. And then when I started feeding it a lot heavier, it took off. Absolutely took off. I waited for it to rise after I formed it. Yeah. So you proofed it, and then you shaped it, and then you let it rise again. Yeah, you probably went a little over. And did you use steam in the oven when you baked it? I mean, this is like all stuff I did. I did all of those things. With my first 6 or 7 loaves, I did all of those things. It definitely happens. I didn't get really good at sourdough until like 2 years ago. And once I started feeding my starter like that, that's when I started making banger loaves. You're just getting the full sourdough experience. That's like to be expected. Something's going to go wrong the first like 10 or 15, 20 loaves. The first 4 or 5 times you try a certain method, like it's totally normal. Stuff gets messed up. You try again. You know, that's the reason why I've learned how to make so many things, is because I don't let little mess ups get me down. I'm like, oh, screwed that one up. I guess we'll try again. What can we change for next time? I get to researching. I'm like, why do sourdough loaves go flat in the oven? And I like look up all and see what I can figure out. I hop on YouTube. I figure it out. Good at making the lazy man. Wanted to try a loaf for sandwiches. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the first 3 or 4 or 5 loaves are weird, and it happens. It's definitely part of the par for the course. Nobody's perfect on the first go. Yeah, first few loaves of bread, definitely Frisbees. Mine were like, even in loaf pans, were flatty to the flat because I wasn't shaping them right. I was overproofing them. Like there were so many, I wasn't putting enough steam in the oven. Having adequate amount of steam in there really helps with the bread to rise. That stops the crust from forming quite so quickly. So you're able to, it's able to get taller if you have adequate steam. So recently, my last 3 bakes, the last bake I made was like, it was spot on, sister. I was very happy with that bake. I started putting like a glass Pyrex dish with some rolled up washcloths and covered them with boiling water in the oven, in addition to putting my mug full of ice cubes in the oven. So the two things together, the ice cubes make really fast steam, and then the washcloths increased the humidity in there for more of a prolonged steam. And I think that really helped the rise of my loaves. You want to make sure that they're not fully risen when you put them in, because they'll just go, you know, flatten out. Trying to think. That's really pretty much, I figured you were going to be hungry. You didn't eat enough dinner. A little snack that's made up of protein mist. Are you going to have some nuts? What are you having? Nuts. Okay. I'm going to give this one more set of coil folds. And then I'm going to hop off, I think. So it's just learning these little differences, little things that you can tweak. And once you get it all sorted out, it'll click, right? It just takes some practice and some experimentation, figuring out your oven and how your oven works. Like my oven does not do well if I don't have, I have a pizza pan, a cast iron pizza pan that lives on the bottom of my oven. And it's there all the time. I use it for pizza, but it lives in there all the time. And so when I bake bread, if I take that out of there, the bottom of my bread gets burnt, which really sucks when I'm baking 10 loaves of bread at the same time and I burn the bottom on half of them and the other half is fine. Terrible. I do not use a Dutch oven. I open bake all my bread. Dutch ovens are a pain in the butt. I don't ever bake just one loaf of bread. So for me, a Dutch oven would be like, I'm making 15 or 20 loaves of bread to sell at the farmer's market, having to bake them one at a time. I'd be standing there twiddling my thumbs all day long. So when I bake, minimum of 4 loaves at a time. When I'm doing it for farmer's market, I can fit 10 loaves of bread in the loaf pans in my oven, bake them all at once, and not have to mess around. You use a Dutch oven? Yes, I don't do the Dutch oven. Did you bake your loaf pans in the Dutch oven? They're super heavy and awkward. Yeah, I did it like twice. I was like, this is annoying. How can I bake sourdough without a Dutch oven? Me over here on YouTube and Google. But that's where my sourdough Instagram page came in super, super handy, is that I was able to learn from so many bakers. Like I have all of these bakers that send me their stuff for me to feature on my page. So I see all these cool scoring techniques, all of these cool shaping techniques, all these different like inclusions, and it's so fun. It's super, super fun. I love it so much. Yeah, you didn't in the loaf pans. Okay, I see. How did the bottom of your bread look? Do you know where the heating element is in your loaf or in your oven? Is it on the top or the bottom? Mine heats from the bottom, which is fantastic for pizza, not so great for bread. You may be able to make some adjustments as far as the positioning of your loaf in the oven and things like that too. What else? I'm gonna drink some of this hibiscus. All right, guys. So in the morning, I might actually go live in the morning to shape my bread. We'll see how motivated I am. I may just make a reel. We'll see if I'm feeling chatty or not. Okay, the bottom was perfect. Sweet. Yeah, mine's electric. So there's a burner on the top and a burner on the bottom. Of course, I'm so happy to walk you through it. And if you are like in the process, what's open bake? Open bake is, so sourdough bakers, a lot of sourdough bakers who make artisan bread will bake their bread in Dutch ovens, the little stainless steel oven things to trap steam in with their bread. Open baking is where you don't use a Dutch oven. So anything you're baking with no Dutch oven, in the sourdough world, they call that open bake. And so you just have to add steam to the entire oven instead of trapping it right around your bread. So I add the towels inside of the little Pyrex dish, and I add ice cubes to make immediate steam to help the crust stay softer so it can rise really well. Yeah, sourdough, there's all sorts of terms in sourdough. There's like scoring, which is like when you cut the top of your bread, it's scoring it. What else? Lame. The lame is like it's basically just a razor blade that you can cut your bread, like put little decorations on. There's a Danish dough whisk, which is like a special circular topped whisk that's particularly good for making dough. I'm trying to think other terms. Stretch and folds. That's where you pull the dough up and fold it over. And then what I've been doing is coil folds, where you pick it up from the middle and it folds under. Proofing. Proofing is the amount of time you let it sit to ferment. So you could proof your bread from, depending on how much sourdough you put in there, for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to 12 to cold proof for 3 or 4 days. So there's lots of variation, lots and lots of different options and ways to do it. If you like super, super sour sourdough bread, you might proof it a lot longer and proof it in the fridge for an extended period of time. If you like a milder sourdough, then you might use a stiff sweet starter, which is just a sourdough that you make really solid like this, but you add some sugar to it. Like there's all sorts of stuff. There's lots of stuff. Anyway, guys, I'm going to bail. I have a Zoom call here in a few, so I'm going to hop off. But I will talk to you guys soon. Good night.